Hi guys, this is my first time doing live on YouTube. Kind of excited about this new opportunity, a new project. I'm ready to hit a different audience. If you guys don't know me, I've been doing tons of videos on Facebook Live, but I'm kind of trying to move away from just primarily and solely the Facebook scene, trying to get my YouTube channel going. Or no, for some reason, I feel as though I can be a little more myself on my YouTube channel. So, all right, guys, let me know if you join in. What I wanted to do today was I had posed some questions on my little feed here, and I wanted to see where you guys were at. I'm trying to gather more people in my community to see if we can get into these discussions about consciousness, awakening, shifting out of the old and into the new, creating the life we came here to live, healing, deconditioning old beliefs, transcending old ways in which we were programmed. So I want to make this conversation interactive and live. So nobody's here so far, which is okay. This is how it starts. This is really, truly how it starts. I'm going to keep going no matter if anybody shows up. All right. Because when you start to go through this process and you start any new venture in your life, whether it be physically, psychologically, spiritually, you feel alone at first. And sometimes you are. One of the topics that I posed in the chat box is this feeling of being isolated as you start to come out in your new form, whatever that may be. So for me, when I started on this awakening journey, which was really in 2015 when everything just started to amplify and accelerate, I felt a little bit like a freak. I needed a little time to figure out what was going on because I was experiencing things that I've never experienced before. So thankfully, I did have some good resources on the internet that helped me. And pretty early on, I was able to see that I was experiencing a spiritual awakening. I kind of felt like that's what was happening, but I definitely got more information from YouTube. And that's one of the reasons why I'm inspired to do this out in the world, is because it did help me. It didn't fix everything. It didn't heal everything. It didn't make everything better. But sometimes it's really nice to know that you're not alone. And when you're facing a lot of inner shift and inner transformation and inner breaking down and just inner turmoil, it's nice to know that someone else out there is feeling the same thing. So we all know this. And for many of you out there, this awakening has been really confusing and really hard. Okay, so I recently wrote an article on my blog in terms of, spiritual awakening is not a walk in the park. This isn't some love and light festival that you attend and you wake up and your whole life is perfect and blissful. When you start on this process of this, what we'll label a spiritual awakening, or we could also call it a major physical, metaphysical, psychological shift. I think many people can experience this through physical means, such as a life or death experience, an illness, a divorce, a death in the family. And some people just experience it in some sort of ambush style. But when we start to experience this, it's really different. And when it's different, you seek out other people who can give you some sort of awareness and advice. And for me, I found some good people pretty early on, but they were far and few between. Most of the time, I was doing it on my own and basically just seeking a little bit of confirmation through other people that what I was feeling and experiencing was quote unquote still normal enough to not be crazy, right? So that's the thing. You don't find a spiritual awakening. You can't push for a spiritual awakening. It comes to you when you're ready. Again, whether it comes to you in form of tragedy or accident or illness or separation or in immense pain or a broken heart or just randomly, it can be taken, it's a shock. It's a shock to the system. And you need time to sit with everything as your life starts to transform into something else that you never even knew existed. Okay. So when you start to go through something like this, and if you feel alone, I'm just here to simply tell you, you're definitely not alone. You're not alone. There are many other people experiencing this right now more than ever, and there have been way showers who have come before us. Okay, something that I really like, a guy that I watch on YouTube every now and again, he says this phrase called "There's nothing new under the sun," and what it means is the truth is out there, the truth has been out there, and all of us come to truth, whether externally or internally, when we're ready for it. And that means that what you're going through, someone else has been through before. This isn't new. It feels new and completely foreign to us individually, but it's not new. So that's all I wanted to share with you guys. There are people out there who have been going through this. You're not the only one. And be discerning when you start to use the internet as a source of information for yourself, all right? Because there's a lot out there. And I did this initially myself. So my coming to consciousness, or my developing a greater awareness, I haven't arrived at anything. I'm still working on this, and I'll be working on this probably forever. Just have a greater understanding of it now. Came primarily in 2015. Now, that being said, because of major illness that I've gone through in my life and circumstances, I've started an awakening process much, much earlier on in my life. I did have a life or death experience, which really started to transform my thoughts around what it meant to be a human living on this planet. And that was probably 15 years ago. So my process was always going on. That's how I feel. And I can even look back into my childhood and think about the ways in which I realized that things weren't the way that we were always taught. But fast forward, all of those little mini awakenings and mini epiphanies and moments and experiences prepared me, kinda, for what happened in 2015. So 2015 was when this kind of ambush awakening happened for me. And it happened for me out of the blue, spontaneously, completely unexpected, by connecting with someone else who what could be classified as a mirror of your soul, a twin flame, a catalyst, a twin soul, whatever you want to label it as. So that happened, and my mind really just completely blew open, right? So when that happened, this was beyond anything that I had experienced in the past. And as I said, my minor preparations that led up to that were very minute compared to what happened. Now, keep in mind, I had been a practicing yogi. I was really into the spiritual community. I was meditating frequently, eating healthy, doing everything quote unquote right, leading up to that. Okay, so it's not like I was just being introduced to the world of spirituality and higher dimensions and consciousness. I was on that journey already for 20 years prior, right? And the funny thing is, when I went through this in 2015, I realized just how spiritually arrogant I thought I was, being in that spiritual community and in the yoga community. And I even owned yoga studios and wellness centers, and you get very like this single pointed focus, and you think that you got it figured out. So, I actually even recall verbalizing before this ambush. I remember I was outside and I said actually out loud, I said, wow, I'm doing really good, right? My spiritual practice is really accelerated, and I've got this successful yoga studio, and my marriage is going pretty good. And geez, I think I've got it figured out. And it was about 6 months later that, God had had a little chuckle and decided to let me play with the big boys, so to speak. So when that happened in 2015, Everything was so fast, so sudden, so unexpected, and it literally threw me for a loop. Everything about how I thought I had been living and my life up to that point all flashed before my eyes. And I realized, holy shit, this is going to change everything. This is going to stir up a lot of shit. This is bad. But my soul said, this is good, right? So literally, I want to say this because this is absolutely, truly how it happened for me. Within the glance of an eye, again, I had this perceived identity and notion that my life was all wonderful and I was spiritually evolved and everything was going great. I had it figured out. And in the glance of an eye with another human being that God placed in front of me to show me my shit, in the glance of an eye, I knew. It took my breath away. And I just had that understanding that, and I said to myself, oh, life will never be the same. Life will never be the same. In the moment of an eye, in the glance of an eye. So I always remind people that I work with now who are in desperate situations or, amidst a lot of change in their life and or confused or lost or whatever, that, hey, you know what? I've experienced this myself, that your life can change that quickly, right? But for me, I wasn't trying to control it or change it. It happened when I was ready. It happened when God said it was time. It happened when it was time, right? So that's a huge thing with this awakening process. And I've been guilty of it up and down, is that once it started to happen, I wanted to take over and control the process. It still hasn't worked that well. I still do it. And I constantly work on myself to have patience. I've realized a lot since this ambush awakening, since that glance of an eye. I've learned a lot about myself. That spiritual sovereignty and elitism that I thought that I had, I realized I was nothing. Nothing. Had to laugh at myself, right? So, they always say the more you think you know, the more you actually have to learn. You realize that you don't know anything when you start to develop your consciousness on a higher level. You realize just how small and insignificant we are, and that us, working on ourselves can be the most glorious way to come to consciousness, but you never really fully arrive. So, I had to consistently look at myself and realize that I didn't know as much as I thought I knew. And I had to realize that I was starting from scratch, that everything that I had built up about my identity and my persona and what I projected in the world needed to shift. And for me, I shifted things really quickly because I was a quote unquote spiritual teacher at the time. When I felt this connection with this other being, it shifted my psychology. It shifted everything about the inner workings of who I am. And I felt something that I had never felt before. And in my teachings, I always tell my students, follow your heart, trust your intuition, take the road, that's the road less traveled. I always encourage this free spirit and this ability to accept your soul's destiny and to not fight against it. So when this happened to me, I felt as though I was a fraud if I didn't follow it, right? I used discernment for about 5 minutes. That was it. Just about 5 minutes I used discernment. And then I said, all right, I'm feeling this. I got to go for it. I got to get a divorce. I got to change my life. I got to change my business. I got to change everything right now because I have to follow my heart and follow my truth. And I can't even for one more day live in this existence that I've created that now I see is not in alignment. I wouldn't really suggest doing it that way. If that's how you do it, that's how you do it. But I will say that I realized that in my impatience, in my ability to want to control and fix everything as soon as possible because I need to get to where I'm going and be the best version of myself that I can to help other people, I a lot of shit up. A lot. And it took me a long time to put things back together. I had very long periods of isolation and out of body experiences. And I struggled because I literally just let the tower collapse immediately. And that was really hard to do. And to be honest with you, I'm really surprised I survived. I took on so much mentally, physically, spiritually, all at the same time. And keep in mind, if you guys don't know me personally, that I also was about to go through my second kidney transplant. So my kidney function was starting to decrease. For those of you who don't know anything about kidney transplants, let me just give you a little information about this. When you have a kidney transplant, kidneys don't last forever. A replaced kidney is like a replaced car battery. Eventually, you're going to have to replace it. And there's all sorts of information around why the kidney lasts as long as it does, and can it be prolonged, and the medications that actually hurt the kidney. So I'm really passionate about that on the side too, about this metaphysical causality and things with organ transplantation and the medical field in general. But the awakening right when I was about to need my second kidney transplant. And if you've never lived with a failing organ, it's not pretty. It's not just like you go to the doctor, oh, guess what? You're going to need a new replacement. Let's find somebody to give you one, or hope somebody dies to give you one, and then you put it in and you'll be good to go. Not like that. It's a humongous process to get an organ transplant. And when your kidneys don't function, you don't remove toxins from your body. Right? You don't pee. You get all this toxic, you have your, the certain minerals and things building up in your body that shouldn't be, and you got to remove the toxins. So I was starting dialysis as I was going through my spiritual awakening, which was really fun. Oh, and going through a separation and moving out of my house and, risking losing my health insurance before a kidney transplant and so on and so forth. Besides the fact that everybody in my life thought I had just lost my marbles, right? And kind of looked like I did. But something within me, I had this little teeny tiny seed that was familiar to me because it's a seed that's been within me since I can remember as a child. It was this seed that I trusted myself. I trusted my heart. And no matter what it looked like on the outside to anybody else, I was going to stay connected to this heart, and I was going to have this trust in my process, because there have been times where I'm pretty certain I was losing my mind and in my past and didn't want to go on when I was so sick and had struggling childhood issues, as everybody does. But there was always this little seed that would show itself when I would get in my dark moments. And when everybody was questioning my mental health, and while I was going through this awakening, I knew that there was something within me that had an intelligence that was beyond what anyone else's judgment could overlay on me. So I literally felt like I was just running off the energy of this teeny tiny seed within my soul. And then everything else externally around me was just collapsing, all at the same time. Okay. It was intense. It was intense. And I did feel alone at times. I would connect with certain people digitally on, YouTube, but there was just a big sense of nobody understands me. Like nobody gets me. And, it was me in that kind of separation consciousness and kind of making it worse because I didn't want to be around anybody's judgments. And that's exactly what I needed. I needed to isolate myself for a long time. And for those of you going on this journey, I will say that you're going to need periods of isolation. You're going to need long periods of isolation. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think you should force yourself around people when you need to just sit and reflect or sleep or eat ice cream or do whatever. Right? One thing that I realized when I was trying to cope with this beginning stages of the awakening, and even now, that all of my rules and regulations when I was a spiritual person, they no longer applied. They no longer applied. It didn't matter if I was vegan at this point. It didn't matter how often I was doing, downward facing dog. It didn't matter how many times I was meditating or what I was wearing or how conscious I was being. I had to do whatever my body needed in the moment, right? And that was a little weird. If you're so conditioned into health and lifestyle and wellness and yoga and spirituality, and then all of a sudden you're finding yourself scrapping to do whatever, you don't eat for 4 days, and then all of a sudden you need a burger, and then you need to sleep for 18 days, and then yoga and meditation was the last thing on my mind. I was trying to comprehend what the hell was going on. It was the last thing on my mind. The last thing. And I realized at that moment that all of those programs that I had are helpful, but you don't need to so rigidly get caught up into that, the systemology of how you live your life, even though it's a healthy lifestyle, because it's just too much. Sometimes you need to just listen and honor to what your body needs. Similarly, I'm going to reverse back to when I was initially diagnosed with my disease, which was lupus. When I got lupus, when I acquired lupus, manifested lupus. Did I say that? Can manifest a condition? I think so. So when this happened to me at 21, a long time ago, when I was 21, I was quote unquote perfect. I was meditating, practicing yoga 5 times a week, Ashtanga yoga nonetheless, 2 hours in the morning. I was eating vegan, all organic. I was conscious. I was praying. I was intentional. I was looking into Ayurveda and saging my house. I was doing everything. Perfect. And then I almost died from an autoimmune disease because something wasn't right. And I realize now, looking back, it was this perpetuation of trying to be perfect and not accepting myself for who I was. Thought I had to do all these other things to be the person I came here to be, that contributed to my autoimmune disease. What is autoimmune? Why do we have such a high amount of people being diagnosed with autoimmune, predominantly women? Autoimmune is the self attacking the self for no reason. You're attacking yourself. Think about that. So to me, makes so much sense metaphysically. That's exactly what I was doing. I was not accepting myself as I was. I didn't feel I was good enough. So I needed to do yoga and lose weight and eat vegan and drink green smoothies and be this person and be nice to everybody. I was not accepting myself as a divine female human being. I was playing into the programs that you have to do this in order to have this, and you have to be this, and you have to do this. And I was not accepting of myself. And that disease destroyed me. That disease, lupus, put me in a wheelchair, bald with no hair, struggling to go to the bathroom to take a pee. It destroyed everything about me physically, destroyed. And then I had nothing externally to rely on. I couldn't make my body any better. I couldn't present myself any better. I had to get down to nothing to realize inside where that seed was again, and to find that I had it all already within me. And I was trying way too freaking hard to be perfect. Way too hard to be perfect. Every day, day in, day out. Now, in my attempt to perfection, I was doing healthy things, but those healthy things became very toxic for me. And I understand in my illness that God had a plan for me to knock it off, that I could be of better service by just simply being myself and encompassing true holistic intelligence and trusting what my body needed in the moment. Okay. So, everybody comes to this journey differently. Mine began way back then, right? And I see now how this spiritual awakening, I needed to go through all of that. I needed to go through those traumas and those heartaches and those experiences and severe childhood wounds and religious abuse up and down with the Christian pushing and scaring me as a child. I needed to go through all that to simply recognize that that wasn't right, to decondition it, to face all of those demons that had been laid onto me by other people's fears and traumas and their belief systems, to just get down to the person that I truly am. And 2015, my whole identity, big existential crisis, just got shot down the tubes. And I started to even rebel against yoga and spirituality. I started to realize, that's as, can be, not always, that can be as fake as the religious programming that was overlaid onto me until I cried as a child. I wanted to get real. I wanted to feel authentic. I wanted to stop with all of the bullshit, and I wanted my life to just be real and holistic and balanced. And I still struggle with that. I still develop every day. To me now, every day is a new experience. Every day I feel different. Every day. It's a beautiful, beautiful opportunity to go through something like this, but it can be really hard. And I started doing this live today because that's really all I wanted to say is you're not alone. It is hard. It's really hard. It's really freaky. We can talk about all the metaphysical aspects of it. And I'll tell you right now, it was very hard for me to come down. I was all into the ascension, but I was not coming down. I even had a moment where, God came to me and he said, he was kind of pissed. And I was laying on my couch. And after 6 months of laying on my couch in bliss, just looking out the window, and he said, all right, Stephanie, do you want to stay or do you want to go? Because this is getting a little pathetic. And I heard it clear as day. And I realized, I was like, yeah, I've just been sitting here on this couch for 6 months in bliss. And I had to think about it. For some reason, I really love those upper realms, those planes, and the sensations and the feelings and the connection and the oneness. But I'm here on Earth for a mission. And Earth is kind of dense. It's kind of hard. And I chose to stay. And I felt very strong in that moment when I said, I'm staying. I think that I have work to do here. I'm going to stay. And I felt strong. And I felt proud of myself for choosing to stay and leaving that bliss to come back down to earth. And what happened was the next morning, I felt like God had been holding me high on top of the Empire State. And in the morning, I felt like he just let me go. And boy, did I hit some concrete. Whew. I woke up in the following morning, back in the realm, the earth realm, the more dense realm. And I could feel the heaviness. I could feel it. And I remember I woke up and I thought, oh my God, how am I going to do this? How am I going to re-enter this place and make a difference? It's heavy. It's hard. There's a lot of hatred. How can I make a difference? How can I do it? And I felt overwhelmed. And I remember at one point looking up and saying, I made a mistake. Take me. I made a mistake. I can't do it. It's too much. And he said, no, you made your choice. You can do it. And that was several years ago. And I'm still here, scrapping my way, waking up, being grateful, shifting with all of these rapid shifts, surrendering, trying not to be so impatient, and just to embrace this beautiful, awakened life I came here to live. That's it for my first live. I make a whole bunch of Facebook lives, but I kind of want to move to YouTube. So hopefully one day I'll have somebody that says something so we can communicate. And I'm going to keep doing it because that's what I've been doing since this, and I'm not going to stop. So, all right, guys, I'm going to end this live stream. Thanks for joining. There might be somebody here. If you're here, thank you. And I'll see you again soon.